Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Okay. I am using a new device, so
Oh.
I just wanted to make sure it's working okay.
Yeah, you sound great.
Perfect. Okay. And I think,
Um, okay, hi everyone. Thank you for attending. As an introduction, my name is Nina Testa. I work at Pace University in the Alumni Relations Office. I work specifically with young alumni and with students as well. Um, we have just launched our Gold Graduates of the Last Decade program, and all fall we've been featuring various alumni in different fields. And today we're featuring three alumni who all work in the financial field but have chosen different paths. We're featuring Stacy Bueno. She's an '08 graduate. She's a senior associate with banking, capital markets, and advisory group at Citi in London. Um, Joe Lampa is an investment analyst at Ardian, and James Hickey is a portfolio advisor with Merrill Lynch. So they're going to each spend some time talking to you about their experiences, and then we're going to have Q&A at the end. So we encourage you to ask any questions. If you have questions, throw them into the chat box, and I will ask them at the end. And all we ask is that you please keep your microphones on mute. So we're gonna go ahead and start with Stacy. So go ahead, Stacy.
great. Thanks, Nina. Hi, everyone. Stacy Bueno, class of '08. And first and foremost, thanks to Nina and the entire team at PACE for putting this together. It's always an honor to come back to the PACE family and, speak with the students, speak with the future alumni, and answer any questions and help in any way I can. So I guess with that said, I currently work for Citi in banking, the banking, capital markets, and advisory group at Citi, covering a portfolio of multinational consumer and healthcare clients. But I guess just taking it back a little bit, my journey to where I am today was kind of unconventional, if you will. I am a New York native, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and while growing up, interesting childhood, and I am the first in my family to actually graduate university. So just navigating that alone on my own was an interesting challenge in itself. So I ended up at Pace University, originally majoring in accounting, doing the 5-year program. After 2 years, I decided that I did not want to spend the rest of my life determining how something should be accounted for. And quite frankly, I just thought that I wasn't ever going to be exceptional at it. So I made a switch over to finance, where I really enjoyed the work, doing financial analysis much better. And and, during my time at Pace, it wasn't your traditional college experience for me, unfortunately. Even though I had a partial scholarship, it just didn't cover all of the expenses. And so I worked part-time while going to Pace University part-time, largely in the evenings and the weekends. So as you can imagine, I had really, really long days, full schedule. My days usually began at around 8 o'clock in the morning with work and then ended somewhere around 9:15, 10 p.m. after I was done with Pace. And because of this, I didn't really get to participate in a lot of the extracurricular activities that PACE had to offer outside of the accounting case competitions in my first year at PACE. And, so it was a pretty much go to school and back, and that's pretty much it. After PACE, when I graduated, if anyone remembers what 2008 looked like, I can paint a pretty good picture, but that's when the financial crisis happened. And I'll never forget, I was in Thailand. It was 8 p.m., which was 8 a.m. New York time. I'm getting ready to go out for the evening and have dinner. BBC's on the telly, and I see everyone with their boxes walking out of Lehman and Bear Stearns, and just everything's collapsing. So I immediately thought to myself, well, there goes my opportunity right after college and right after graduating. So then and there, thankfully, I still had the job that I'd worked with during my time at Pace University, and they were very happy to keep me on. So it was more of an administrative role. I didn't really get to flex my muscles and use a lot that I had learned at Pace, which is what I had hoped to do, as all of us would hope to do, and really dig our heels into finance and transactionals, and transaction work. So after that, I spent the next 2 years after 2008 working with the company I had worked with throughout my time at Pace University. About a year and a half later, in 2010, I received an offer from them to join their headquarters to work with the director of financial risk analysis, who was predominantly working on acquisitions. The company that I had worked with was super acquisitive, and so they were often looking at other companies to acquire, and there is a lot of legwork that goes into those assessments, right? Does it make sense? What does their portfolio look like? Would it be accretive? And so that gave me a lot of great exposure for the following year. Even though I was doing this type of work, and it was interesting and I got to travel a lot, I definitely got to learn a lot, I noticed that I just still had high hopes of working for a big institutional bank and doing, global banking on a larger scale. So I never gave up. And, a year later, or a year and a half later, after the financial crisis around the end of 2010, beginning of 2011, I started to apply to different banks because the waters looked a little bit calmer. So sure enough, I got picked up by Citi, but working in their Atlanta, Georgia office, again, in covering institutional clients, but mainly in the consumer space, like your Coca-Colas, your Bacardis, and those types of companies. So I worked there, and my first job was as a relationship analyst. So in that role, when you first join, you're basically supporting all of the senior bankers, doing a lot of data mining. So you're doing a lot of research, putting presentations and putting data together, which ultimately help them service our clients, do origination, pitch solutions. And that was a great entry, entry into the whole global banking world. After, and it went really well. After a year and a half, I thought, okay, well, I'd love to work for headquarters. And so it didn't stop there. So from there, I sort of told my aspirations to my current boss at the time. He wasn't thrilled for no other reason than he didn't want to lose me, but he totally understood because the Atlanta office was a smaller office. There was really, everyone on the team were going to be there for some years. And so the prospects of me sort of getting my own portfolio and leading the way would have taken a lot longer than I had hoped. So once I kind of told him this, he made a few phone calls to the New York office, and sure enough, everyone was super supportive. And I was just, there's part of, that you're qualified, but then there's a little bit of luck that goes along with it. I just so lucked out that there was a position available, and with a little bit more responsibility. So, a year and a half after joining Citi in the Atlanta office, I went over to the New York office covering the healthcare space, predominantly med tech sector, because in healthcare, there's a few different sectors. You have your pharma, healthcare services, med tech, and so I covered med tech. And things continued to go really well. I became a credit officer quickly. I was promoted 2 times within 4 years, so very quickly. I started to manage my own portfolio, and in this role, I was predominantly working with the day-to-day, management of liquidity and deployment of capital to these multinational companies in the 60 or so, of the 60 plus countries that they operate in. And so that was super exciting. And, about 4 years after that, I decided that, I took a step back and I thought about my career and where do I want to be. And then I also took a look at the seniors, many of whom I admire, and thought, well, how did they get to where they are? And what can I learn from them? What steps can I follow that they've taken? And I noticed that most all of the seniors had all done a rotation abroad. And a lot of them had really big transactions under their belt. So once more, I'm walking into my boss's office, raising my hand to take on more responsibility, but this time not only to, find a role abroad to have that on my CV, but also to work in a slightly different role that is more technical, has to do with more structuring. And 8 months later, I got that opportunity. It just so happened to be in London. So here I am, about 2.5, 3 years later. This February will mark 3 years. I've been in the London office again with Citi. So this is my third location with Citi. They have been incredibly supportive throughout my time at the bank, and they really do promote mobility, whether it's cross-organizational or cross-border. So that's been just really helpful and to my benefit. So here I am in Citi in London, fast forward today, and still covering a portfolio of consumer and healthcare clients, but those that are domiciled and headquartered here in the United Kingdom. So think of your AstraZenecas, your Diageos that, who are the makers of Johnny Walker. I'm sorry, your Diageos, the maker of Johnny Walker, your AstraZeneca, who many of you have probably seen in the news lately, who are about to have a COVID vaccine approved. So, just really exciting stuff. And then my day-to-day, pretty much you're talking with these finance teams that and treasurers and CFOs, and you're working with them on acquisition finance, and trying to help them determine what's the optimal capital structure. And then of course, if they need financing for just their day-to-day operational needs, considering all of the financing methods out there, we advise and we do a lot of scenarios. There's a lot of modeling involved to help us sort of, give them all the different options as well as the considerations. Because whenever these companies decide to raise capital and access the capital markets, which is what we help them with, they have to take into consideration tax implications as well as many other things. So so that brings me to today, just doing a lot of advisory work, and it's been such a great opportunity, such a great ride. I have no clue where I'm going to be in a few years, because I can tell you that I only raised my hand to do about 2-3 years here in London. I'm coming up towards the end of it, and I am trying to see if I can stay a little bit longer because I'm really enjoying it here. But as far as roles go, I thoroughly enjoy what I do. I love working with clients day in and day out, helping them with their needs and finding solutions. But would I be, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't consider perhaps another role within the bank, or perhaps even moving over to a corporation, into a treasury team, and doing something there. Life is very long, so it's kind of fun to explore different areas. Thanks.
Thanks, Stacy. Next, we're going to hear from Jozef Lampa. He is an investment analyst at Ardian.
Hey, Nina, do you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. First and foremost, I hope everyone managed to have an enjoyable Thanksgiving and that everyone is safe at home. As Nina mentioned, I'm Joe. I graduated from Pace University in December 16. Happy to connect here with you guys and talk a little bit about myself. I was told to follow a specific format, so I'm going to do my best to do so. The first part is my experiences as a student. Look, I had an awesome time at university, and I placed great value during my time there. I think like the majority of all freshmen coming in, I was undecided. I started in Leuven, did not know what I want to do. And quite frankly, that's okay. I think that's the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be challenging experience, just to be asking questions about yourself, your interests, your long-term goals and ambitions, right? And so I joined a few clubs. Most notably for me, it was the Pace Hedge Fund Club. And during my time there, I met several students who I would say influenced me, admittedly, very considerably. And those students challenged my academic track, as well as the perception of how smart I was, right? So I then realized, okay, I take a different set of steps to get to an intellectual level that they are in. I'm not as smart as they are. I have to work harder. Why is it that this one student who's an economics major knows way more about financial topics and current events than any of the guys in the room? So I was naturally and instinctively, I think, persuaded, right? I found that she was a part of something called the College Fed Challenge. And so I decided to investigate and get involved. And I did that my sophomore year. I was part of the research team in the beginning. I was supported by many devoted faculty and staff and around like-minded individuals with good energy and willing to learn. I think that the College Fed Challenge for me was definitely like the best experience I could have, because we were challenged every day to think about real-world examples and apply analysis to those examples and present data, talk about pros and cons, and then ultimately, right, I would be selected as a presenter to compete in the competition, which happened my junior year. In fact, during my junior year, we won the nationals, which was amazing. I don't know if you guys follow, but PACE has won the National College Fed Challenge in, I think, three or 4 times over the last 5 or 6 years. It's something really crazy. And I was part of the second team that won in 2015. And that naturally helped me with interviews and the job selection process. So ultimately, right, I positioned myself, I found out what is I'm interested in, and that was financial markets. I was uncomfortable in the beginning. I surrounded myself with people that I knew would put me in the right direction. I investigated my interests. I joined a select group of students and faculty where I know surrounding myself with them, I would be put on a better track, and then that would ultimately help me with my ambitions, right? During my time at PACE, I also completed 10 internships or part-time jobs, which is kind of crazy. And I did everything from tax accounting to wealth management, which I think is sort of just a synonym for working for a stockbroker. Definitely not something I was interested in. I did municipal bond analysis at a hedge fund in Rye Brook, New York, really the whole spectrum. And then ultimately decided that investment banking was what I wanted to get into. And I was lucky enough to break in. I did just that, and did that during my summer of 2016, that internship, and which ultimately led to a full-time offer. And yeah, now I'm in private equity, which is sort of the natural transition from there. But let me go back to this little layout so I can be more specific.
It was just a guideline. You can, take it.
Okay. Yeah. So my transition into working life after college. Yeah. So my transition was very smooth. Like I said, I interned at Wells. That was the bank I worked for during summer 2016. After completing the program, I received a full-time offer and was scheduled to return in the summer of 2017. So that was pretty seamless, and I had a really easy there. First job was with Wells Fargo. I started as an analyst in the consumer healthcare and gaming group. And within that group, I sat in the consumer and retail team and focused most of my time in covering the restaurant space and consumer product space. I did a lot of work, a lot of transactions in debt and M&A, both public and private, and I'm happy to talk about any of those later if you guys have any questions. What I wish I knew then. So hindsight is almost always 20/20, I would say. And yeah, look, I think the most important skills in university are reading, writing, and public speaking. And no matter what you say, I know you're focused on your major in accounting and computer science, just like biology, whatever it is, the technical aspect, but those foundational skills are going to be the most important with you wherever you go. They're very applicable, very versatile. you should always be focusing on reading, writing, and public speaking. And I wish someone had hammered that to me much younger than, or to me when I was much younger than when I started school. Always feel like I'm catching up there. Where am I now? So yeah, after 18 months at Wells, I decided I wanted to jump over to the buy side. I was very, I would say, open-minded as to the opportunities I would pursue, jumping from investment banking. I ultimately chose the most conventional path, going into private equity. So now I work for a company called Ardian. It is a French private equity firm based in Paris. We have roughly 100 billion of assets under management. I sit on the fund of funds team, and I spend most of my time monitoring existing investments on a primary and secondary basis, as well as looking at new opportunities. And once again, I'm happy to dive into any of those details, Q&A later. And the last topic is, where am I heading in the future? Well, hopefully I'm retired soon. No, just joking. I'm happy with where I am, and look, private equity, specifically the secondary market, is only going to continue to grow. There's so much dry powder out there. There's a ton of funds being moved into the asset class, especially since the 80s. It's a very, very sought after pool of capital, and I think it's only going to attract more and more money given the return profile. I think I'll stay within financial services, and I definitely want to stay on the buy side. I think the work is much more interesting, and I think that'll be the case for the short to medium term, for sure.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. And last, we have James. He is a portfolio advisor at Merrill Lynch.
Hi, everyone. It's hard to, be the last one. You guys had great stories. Love the dedication. It gave a very clear overview of, what this sector entails and just how broad it can be, right? There's just so many different paths you can take. So wanted to say, first and foremost, just like my two predecessors, thank you everybody for joining. Hopefully I can shed some light on where I am in finance in comparison to Stacy and Joe. And hopefully you guys have a lot of questions for us, because that would be one thing I wish, starting from the latter half of Nina's list, one thing that I wish I had done or wish I knew when I started is ask more questions, be more curious. If you have somebody who's doing something you're even remotely interested in, ask them about it, because the last thing you want to do is work really hard to enter a career that you find out you don't like or don't enjoy, because if you don't enjoy it, it makes it that much harder, especially within financial services. You need to enjoy it, or else you will just, you'll crumble into misery. But going back a bit, starting off at Pace, I knew I wanted to be in finance. So I was very lucky with having a general direction of, I want to be in this kind of thing, not necessarily knowing what, but doing a lot of reading, a lot of research, asking some professors and saying, oh, well, what's out there? And after, taking some tallies, I said, okay, kind of following along Joe's path, right? Investment bank for 2 years. And then when I hit associate, I'll either go to a hedge fund or private equity, or maybe even venture cap, and I'll take it from there. And that, who were a bit older than me, whom did exactly that. Some people went to Goldman, some people went to JP, some people went to Morgan Stanley. And I just saw the change that there was in them, right? They loved it. They were sick. They loved just the thrill of it and the work, and they were all about it, but you saw that they were different, right? And as I learned more and more about it, I realized maybe this isn't for me. So I started doing more research, asking more people, what else is out there? And then I stumbled upon, oh, well, you could be a wealth manager, or you could, you know, work in the consumer bank, or you could work in the private bank. You do things like that. So I looked into that more and more. And just upon graduation, I was bouncing around. I had a short stay contract position on the global coverage desk. So that was TMT. A lot of fun, but definitely an eye opener. Did a financial modeling contract for one of the top financial litigation investing firms in the world. So essentially, those are the firms that will model out and whom will give you or loan you capital to fund your litigation case to then get paid out on a multiple of your settlement. So very interesting stuff, a lot of moving parts. And I ended up getting introduced to a wealth manager at Merrill. And, you know, before this, I had done a little work at Morgan Stanley in the private bank, which was also a good time, very informative. But this gentleman at Merrill essentially asked me, what do you want to do with your life? You know, what's important to you? And I said, you know, I want to. And when I say decent work-life balance in finance, it's not saying a whole heck of a lot, because I don't think there is a decent work-life balance. But I want to, when I'm 40, be able to spend time with my kids. Like, that's very important to me. I want to be able to spend time with my family. I want to be able to, you know, have a weekend that I don't need to worry about work necessarily all the time. And he said, okay, well, what do you want to do within finance? And I said, I mean, I love capital markets. When I was at Pace, looked around a lot, being that I was on the Pleasantville campus, so it was a bit more limited than you city folk. There was no real finance clubs, and I said, you know, that's a real shame. So I started one, fantasy investment club, and it was small in the beginning, but we grew to over 50 members, and it's, after I graduated, it's still going. Somebody took up my place as president, and it's still going and thriving. I sit on their video calls all the time. They have some very interesting Pace alums coming in, and you know, it was just very, very interesting. But capital markets was important. But also, I'm a big puzzle solver. You know, I love to find out the 2 E's of every situation. How do you solve it in an effective and an efficient manner? And I said, okay, well, what else? What else do you like? So I love talking to people. I love hearing their stories. You know, I'm big about that. Okay, what else? I didn't know what he was trying to drag out of me. And I said, I mean, I don't know. I'd like to do a lot. You know, I'm interested a little in accounting and balance sheet work, and you know, income statements and GAAP tax, and there's so many things. And he was like, that's what I wanted to hear, because when you're in this business, you need to be interested by a lot. You know, you could be a specialist, of course. And on my team, I'm a portfolio advisor. So I construct the portfolios. I talk to the different money managers, asset managers, you know, whether it be, you know, like a Natixis, a BlackRock, a Neuberger Berman kind of thing, and talking to them and understanding how they think about the world and where we are, but also getting into the nitty gritty on trust, estate, you know, how does tax affect both institutional and retail clientele, and going about it that way. And so that really just opened Pandora's box for me as for what that career set entailed. And then I just said, you know, I'll do it. Yeah, I'll try. I'll dive in. And I mean, it's been 2 years now, and I've gotten promoted twice, and it's been a beautiful understanding of life, because I thought it was going to be, you know, I do everything for my clients, both institutional and retail. I got a card from one of our PE principals, whom we're really friendly with. He comes to the office all the time. He's right next door. You know, we exchanged cards for Thanksgiving. I mean, I've only known this guy a year and a half, but it's gotten so close. And I mean, I love that, because traditionally finance is at an arm's length for a multitude of reasons. And I understand that and respect it. But I love how I'm so ingrained in multiple facets of the industry while being able to remain close to both clients, colleagues, and even opposing firms. You know, you think some of our institutional clients have 2 or 3 advisory teams, and being able to give them a call, you know, over at Morgan Stanley and say, hey, you know, can you give me the specs on, you know, what this month's P&L looks so friendly. You don't normally find that a lot. And I just fell in love with it. And, you know, where do I see myself in the future? A client asked both I and my partner this when I first started, and I didn't know how to answer. And he said, I want to be doing exactly what I'm doing now, but on a grander scale. And I get it, because that's where I want to be in the future. In 10, 20, 30 years, I want to be doing what I'm doing now, just on a grander scale, you know? Like, I've hired 2 people since I've come on. My partner has hired 7 people since he's come on, you know, and then above him, it's a pyramid, and it's a wonderful thing because it just grows and it becomes more wholesome as you go along. And one thing I'm sure both Stacy and Joe can attest is because you're always looking for either something better, and you always kind of have to watch your back, right? Because, you know, if something horrible happens in the firm's back pocket, you know, you're a liability. But in this field, you don't really have to worry about that, right? Because your book of business is exactly that. It's your business, and you're building it the way you want to, and it's growing with you. So let me see, future as a general guideline, that would be great. I'm following Joe's steps and, you know, reading that list off that Nina provided, just to make sure I didn't go off on a tangent. Yeah, I mean, all in all, it's a beautiful thing because there's so many traits and so many facets within it, and it's only growing. You know, just as Joe said with private equity, the private equity and hedge fund clients, and from what we've seen, hedge funds are, you know, on the down and private equity is on the up. There's a lot of capital going into that space, and rightly so. It's very attractive. There's a lot going on. People like it. The same thing on the private wealth side. It's a very opening business. And when I say opening, I should have used expanding business, right? It's almost growing to the rate of they don't have enough people to fit the expansion, right? There's just so much out there. And as the banks get bigger, you know, this is across all banks, they will be hiring more for this. So yeah, before I go on another tangent, let me cut it. Nina, you're on mute.
Thanks, James. So if anyone has questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I got some privately, so we'll start with those. Do you guys have, it seems like you guys have all benefited a lot from your network, from talking to various people that you know within PACE when you graduated. Do you have some advice for networking in this online environment that we're in right now that might be a little trickier to navigate?
I mean, I don't know that I'm going to be much help here because I'm still learning how to navigate the online environment, which I think is just new for all of us. My work historically, I'm on a plane every other week meeting with clients in person all over the place. And I do, you know, I like to think that I do much better in person as opposed to video chat. For whatever reasons. So I'm still learning how to navigate that. And it's interesting because when you're in these forums, you know, at times you notice that there's a little bit of confusion with, especially if you're with your team, right? If you're with your team and there's more than one member of your team that can answer a particular question, it's like, how do you navigate that? Or even, for example, I find that I'm doing more social events with my clients online through Zoom. So we'll all, instead of doing your holiday lunch or a lunch to sort of congratulate them, we're having, just different events where we're doing wine tastings and having wines delivered to their, to their home. But I mean, one of the things that that our company is starting to do is they're starting to have sort of these little online training sessions to help all of us navigate, because I can tell you, me and my colleagues, we're learning. And, and then of course there's the challenges of also of, of also your, your technical challenges that you have to, get through, and how do you manage that? I mean, the same way that you would manage sort of, a misstep if you're on stage, publicly speaking. You kind of just recover quickly, go over it, don't harp on it, don't draw attention to it. One of the things I will say also is I do find that it's a little bit harder to develop a connection with clients, or with anyone for that matter, when you're on these forums, right? So the only advice I can give to you here is, if you're on one of these forums and if you see someone that you're interested in, or if they said something that you'd like more information on, right? Reach out to them afterwards and just say, hey, thank you for your time, I really enjoyed this. Or, it's so nice to put a face to a name, right? Because in some cases you will have maybe heard, can't come across their name via email or something. So reach out to them on the side and try to continue developing those relationships, because in these forums it's going to be much more difficult, in my opinion anyway. I'm not sure if Joe or James has a different experience or can add something.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, go ahead.
No, go for it, Joe.
Good,
I'll grab at you.
good example.
Networking is fundamentally very important, especially in finance, whether you're doing it in person or in this new world over Zoom or just over the telephone, which I think is pretty standard, right? Look, if you meet someone indirectly or directly and they're doing something that interests you or you think it interests you, it's important to get their contact info. Of course, doing it mindfully and in a socially correct setting, right? You don't want to be remembered as somebody who is, for the lack of a better word, a fly, a pest. Yeah, you want to demonstrate interest, and you also to taste that interest, to explore that further. You could ask to pick their brain. The reality is, people, especially older folks, like to talk about themselves. And so they're going to give you 5, 10, or 15 minutes. That's fine. But the things you have to make sure that you want to do is to be absolutely prepared when talking to those folks, right? I can't tell you how many times that I've gone on discussions where I don't think I had enough questions, or I didn't do my research and I felt I was wasting this guy's time. And now similarly, when I have some students from PACE reach out to me now and they tell me, hey, I want to get into banking, and then they can't tell me what an investment bank does, I don't know how we're going to get this conversation forward. So, I mean, you have to go after, talk to people who are doing things you're interested in. Try to develop a relationship with them, and be prepared before you speak to them. I mean, that's super important.
Yeah, I'm going to completely agree with everything Joe just said. Take advantage that you go to a well-known school in the city. There is a ton of alumni here that would love to help you. And at that same token, what's the worst thing that happens? If you write them a nice message on LinkedIn, or you get their contact information from a forum and they don't answer you, that is the worst thing that could happen. You're right. But I have not found that to be the case. But making sure that you know what you want to say is imperative. Having an agenda to be able to say, thank you for talking to me today, and this is what I'd like to cover, if that's okay. Because that will show them that you show initiative and that you've thought this through. You're not just wasting their time. But taking advantage of a network you might have and trying to expand it is, once again, following what Joe had said, very, very important. Um, in finance, I mean, it's really who you know and being able to build off of that. So whether it be a family friend or, you know, somebody you see on one of these forums, your professors are a huge asset. A lot of these guys and gals have accomplished a lot, and now they just are professors through their later years, but they have these connections that if they know you and they know you're serious, they will connect you to them. So it's very, very important to just understand where you are and that you have some of these assets here at your university campus, and just all you have to do is ask for them.
We have another question. What advice do you have for someone looking to transition into a career in finance? What do you think the top qualities that companies are looking for? For example, do you need an MBA? Things like that.
Yeah, sure. Happy to start there. I think at the entry level position, what a lot of companies, financial firms are looking for are people who are able to learn, right? They don't expect you to know everything within finance at the get-go. They want to know that you're able to learn. You're intellectually curious. You have great attention to detail, and are willing to work hard. I think those are very, very important qualities. And for the second part, an MBA, I've seen is becoming less and less relevant. The path for an MBA traditionally has become traditionally was always mandatory. I think if you want to elevate up the ranks. Now what you're seeing is a lot of these boutique investment banks and other private investment managers promoting and growing from within, because they realize that that 2 or 3 year program you do in school is not going to yield much upside. There's still many institutions that are very institutional, the mega private equity firms and hedge funds of the world, who still require you to do so. So it's yes and no, but the trend recently has been that an MBA is not mandatory.
Yeah, so I think what I can add there is I participate in a lot of recruiting events for Citi, and so I do get the opportunity to go around to to the different universities and attend networking events, speaking to potential candidates and students. One of the advice that I can give you is, if you want to break into finance and if you're attending these events, know who you're talking to, know what part of finance they operate within, because finance is incredibly broad, and there's no way in the world that you can even start to even structure your questions if you don't even understand what part of finance they're operating within. One of the things that I think, like Joe mentions, is you got to ask questions, but we want to see that the questions that you're asking show that the light bulb is on upstairs. So they have to be smart questions. We don't expect you to know a lot. What we're looking for is people who are thinking and who are curious, and who are, just showing that you're interested, positive body language, the curiosity, sharp questions. And great questions to show that you're engaged. That's going to make you very, very likable. That's going to show us that you can be trained and that you will most likely learn quickly. So I'll definitely say that much. And then for the MBA part, so for a lot of us, when you're recruited straight out of university and you're doing, a lot of big banks, including Citi and, the Goldmans and all of the bigger institutions, we have a pretty intense training program. So you'll be in training for, I don't know, anywhere from 6 to 9 weeks, depending on on the institution you're recruited by. And then, of course, your first 3 years are going to be incredibly intense. You're going to learn so much. I would say, in my experience, it doesn't really make sense to take a leave of absence when you're on an upward trajectory to go for your MBA and to then come back. And in fact, when I've spoken to certain seniors about this, a lot of them said it's really not necessary, not in a role like myself or for anyone who's had the same path that I've had. So that's what I can add.
Okay, this is a question for Joe. You knew you wanted to get into investment banking, so why did you choose economics instead of finance as a major?
Yeah, so I was interested in understanding markets, and I think that the economics program was the best way to do so. As a finance major, you're not taking finance courses that are specific and geared towards traditional financial valuation analyses until your junior and senior year, right? By then, it's too late. If you want to get into investment banking, 99% of the class is selected through the internship program after your junior year. The recruiting for those internship programs starts the beginning of your junior year. By then, it would be too late, right? If you think about it methodically. The econ department at Pace is very solid, and I learned a heck of a lot from those professors, specifically Mark Weinstock, Greg Coleman, Sam Baruch, all very intelligent. They rely on application in their classes, and that's just something I didn't want to wait for. But additionally, to prepare myself for that interview process, I mean, I read a lot of books and did a lot of my own personal work. So, yeah.
And this is a question specifically for Stacy. Someone recently accepted a position in capital markets advisory, and she'd love to hear any advice you have for someone who is just starting out their career in the field. How has it been being an expat for you in finance?
Okay, good questions. And first, congratulations on the position that you've accepted. So advice, I'm assuming that you haven't yet started. So perhaps one of the first things that you want to do, and I hope that you would have done some of this before even accepting the position, is try to just do as much research as possible, whether that involves reading blogs or reaching out to others that you know in the field, and try to get a better understanding of what you're in for, what your day-to-day may potentially look like. Which includes everything, right? What comes through the wire? What are the number of hours that you're expected to work? In capital markets and advisory, that's very broad in itself as well, right? So what specifically will you be doing? If you haven't yet started, but you've accepted the offer, then it's also worth, I would hope that your manager has sort of sent a welcome to the team email copying your entire team. And if that's the case, if I were you, I'd probably reach out to the juniors on those team, introduce yourself, get to know them and say, hey, you know, you've been on the team for 1 year, 2 years now. Can I have your advice? What can I look forward to? Is there anything that I could read in advance to prepare myself? Is there anything that I should know and brush up on? You know, anything to give yourself a head start. Now, fast forward, you're there. I would say just make sure that the intensity level, I mean, I would hope that your intensity level is there, because it's going to be a very demanding job. You will likely work very, very long hours, which James alluded to much earlier in his, in his session when he was speaking earlier. It's very demanding. Be prepared to, have breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the office, or I guess in this day and age, in your home. Be prepared to work weekends. And as long as you're okay with that and it's fine, then that's half the battle, because half of what you need is grit and the other half of what you need is just a little bit of thinking out of the box, right? Don't go to your seniors, don't go to whoever's above you with every little question. Try to Google it sometimes. Half the answers are just on Google. It's a quick, thing. You'll notice that there's going to be a lot of terminology that you may not have previously been exposed to. Those are just going to be quick fixes. Try to do your reading, try to do your Googling so that you're not inundating those above you with with every question, but also make sure that you find that fine line so you're not spinning your wheels, right? Because if you can't find an answer and you're dwelling over it too much or spending too much time, that's not a good use of your time as well. So I would definitely say just try to, ask and definitely do ask a lot of questions, right? But just be careful on the questions, because I've had some questions that my juniors have come to me that I thought, well, you probably could have Googled that or something, right? So just know what are easier questions and what aren't. But then outside of that, looking back at my career, it's kind of that passion, that drive, that grit, not letting anything get me down, getting kicked and getting back up. And of course, asking a lot of questions, to the point where my senior banker, I walked into her office one day and she looked at me and she said, if we were in class together, you would probably be that really annoying kid who always asks questions right before the bell rang. And I just tilted my head like, And she said, but you know what, considering what we're doing and what we're molding you for and where we hope to have you in a few years from now within this bank, I'm very glad you're asking these, all of these questions. They're smart questions. They're showing, and they show us that you're on. So it was the weirdest compliment I've ever received, but I'll take it. So I hope you can make use of that. And of course, I am available to all of you after this and at any point in time, and just happy to help out in any way I can, answer your questions. So hope that helps. And congratulations again, all the best.
Thanks so much. All right, does anyone have any more questions? And all our panelists have said that they're willing to chat, continue a relationship, reach out to them on LinkedIn is probably the best way for them, but they're happy to help. And thank you guys so much for participating in this. We really appreciate it. It seems like it was really helpful for some of you. So, we have one more question for Joe. Sorry. How was the transition from IB to PE for you? And would you say it was easier given your background and experience?
Yeah, it was a good transition. Once you're in banking, actually, I would say the first 6 months, you have a lot of headhunters reaching out to your individual bank and your individual group and finding out who the incoming freshman class is. And then 6 to 12 months down the line, they're already reaching out to you about exit opportunities in 2 years down the line. So the exit process after your program is very structured. It's very quick. And because it's structured and quick and accelerated every year, you're bound to be prepared. I mean, you have to be. Because the typical path is you do it for 2 years and then you leave. No sane person stays for more than 2 years. It's a lot of work, and I think there's far more interesting types of work out there. Unless you totally love it, then you can stay and go A to A, right? But yeah, I mean, banking really prepped me for the interview process. A lot of the work is very similar and transferable, right? You're dealing with companies, you're applying evaluation methodologies. The only difference is that one is on the sell side and one's on the buy side. So considering that, you have to have the mentality when going into interviews, and you have to paint a story as to why you'd be a good fit in that type of role.
Okay, great. All right, so thanks again, guys. This was really great. Again, feel free to reach out to our panelists on LinkedIn. They're here for you as alumni to support you. And thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Nina.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.